Cepetan ngomong. Bismillah dulu, bismillah. Udah itu.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bapak Ibu yang terhormati, akan mulai kembali acara yang sudah tertunda. Para undangan yang terhormat, acara selanjutnya adalah paparan mengenai standar internasional foreign medical team yang akan disampaikan oleh EHA Regional Advisor Seattle, Dr. Roderico Offrin, EHA Konsultan for FMPHQ, Dr. Ian Norton, dengan moderator EHA Medical Officer Indonesia, Dr. Nirmal Kandel, dan Kepala Badan Tanggap Darurat dan Pemulihan Pusat Penanggulangan Krisis Kesehatan, Bapak Dr. Indro Muloko. Kepada moderator, dipersilakan memimpin sesi ini.
Baik, selamat malam Bapak Ibu semua. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Kita sampai pada panel 2, di mana kita akan memakai metode teleconference, yaitu tentang tema standar nasional foreign medical team. Jadi seperti kita tahu bahwa pedoman standar foreign medical team sudah dibuat oleh WHO, saat ini sedang terus diperbaiki. Untuk itu nanti akan dijelaskan oleh salah satu penulisnya sendiri, Dr. Norton dan Dr. Roderico dari Indonesia. Jadi Bapak Ibu sekalian, nanti metodenya pertama Dr. Ian akan menyampaikan presentasi dengan metode conference. Beliau ada di Geneva saat ini. Kemudian nanti untuk selanjutnya Dr. Roderico akan menyampaikan presentasi yang saat ini dia ada di New Delhi. Untuk selanjutnya Dr. Nirmal Kandel, dia adalah PhD Medical Officer PH Indonesia, akan menyampaikan pengantar terkait dengan pembicara maupun brief sedikit gambaran tentang materi yang akan disampaikan. Please, Dr. Nirmal.
Thank you, Pak. Selamat malam. Saya bisa sedikit bahasa Indonesia, tapi saya mau bicara bahasa Inggris. Mohon maaf. We are going to take this session with the support of our colleague from WHO headquarters, Dr. Ian Norton, which you can see on the screen. Dr. Ian, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Yes, and everybody can hear you as well. He is the project lead for the foreign medical team, and he has a huge experience in relation with the foreign medical team and development of the guidelines and trainings. Today we have an excellent opportunity to use the technology. He is right now in Geneva, sitting in his office, and he will take us through the principles of foreign medical team and its guideline. So now, with your permission, I will give the floor to Ian. So Ian, now floor is yours. You can start, and whenever you want a slight transition, you please say next. And if there is anything participant have difficulty to understand, then I will interrupt you. Now floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Terima kasih banyak. Saya bisa bicara sedikit Indonesia, bahasa Indonesia also. Tapi lupa banyak sekali. Maaf. So I will start my presentation, and thank you for the introduction. It is my honor to be here in Geneva for the next 2 years, leading the project for foreign medical team professionalization, registration and coordination. And as you heard in the introduction, my previous role was with the Australian government, managing, training and leading the deployment of teams from Australia into Southeast Asia in times of disaster. Looking most recently through man. So that was in December, and I'm just back from the field there. I'd like you to go to the first slide on background, please. Over the recent years, we've had some examples of extremely good practice by foreign medical teams, and in some cases, poor practice. And examples have come from most of the mega disasters over the last 10 or so years, particularly in the Indian Ocean tsunami in Aceh, for instance. Pakistan earthquakes, the earthquake in Haiti, where there was some discrepancy between the level provided by certain foreign medical teams who were of excellent quality, and then there were the other small groups who perhaps watched CNN and decided they wanted to come and help, but had no coordination, no knowledge, no equipment, and they became more of a burden to the responding nation than a help. And this is really the essence of this project, to make foreign medical teams more coordinated, more professional. And for a government like Indonesia or the Philippines or US, whoever asks for them must expect them to come professional. They must expect them to arrive fully registered to practice, and with minimum standards to fulfill. There is some change in the previous work on this from the PAHO guidelines of 2003. In that group, we were concentrating mostly on field hospitals, not so much on the teams. The new focus is on teams and the capacity of the people involved, not so much in the tents and the structure. Next slide. What we know about the burden of disease and disaster is that we can expect in a sudden onset type disaster, particularly earthquakes, for a sudden spike in trauma. We will see that wave last for 2 or 3 days. And in most cases, the local Ministry of Health and the local and national teams of that country are the best people to manage that surge in demand. The only other groups that can get there in time are countries that are nearby. And so if it's Malaysia, then perhaps the Thai team and the Indonesian team can get there in time to manage that first spike. But we can expect perhaps the European team to arrive too late for that first wave, which is wave number 1 on this diagram. The second wave, or the plateau phase, is when foreign medical teams are probably most likely to make an impact. During that stage, we can see wound and orthopedic fractures requiring treatment, and they will last for 2 to 3 weeks. And after that, it will fade away to background and surgical requirements. And so if a team is arriving at that time, they must come prepared for that particular type of epidemiology. A foreign medical team and also a national team can be used from one part of the country to another to manage also a third wave, which is the public health wave, number 3 on this diagram. Because you have displaced populations, you have outbreaks of perhaps gastrointestinal disease, respiratory tract infection, etc. And so we expect foreign medical teams to be able to manage both the background medical problems in that country and also the wave of extra disease that will come if you have a lot of displaced in the region. There's a fourth wave. If you can see on this diagram, wave number 4 later on the slide, which you can see is the elective surgical cases. The cases of hernia or perhaps cancer, etc., that cannot be operated for the first 3 or 4 weeks. We must remember that that is also a burden, and we must prepare for this high-degree surgical disease. Next slide, please. This is an example of what we know about recent disasters and the actual requirement for surgical and trauma for our medical teams. On your left, you can see a diagram showing the 3 biggest recent earthquakes, except type of power, where we can see in red the 80 which are dead, and then the number of injured is the area above the red section. So in general, we can expect for every dead person, between 2 or 3 injured people to still require some form of care. And so, foreign medical teams and national teams are very useful in earthquakes. Now, on the other side of this slide, you can see tsunami. Japan and Indonesia particularly, you see the number of dead in red. The number of injured is far, far less. The ratio is instead of 1 to 3, is reverse, 9 to 1. And so, there is less for the tsunami sector for surgical care. There may, of course, be requirements for other forms of medical care, but from a surgical point of view, unfortunately, the cases may not have survived the summer. Next slide, please. We seek to define a foreign medical team as any group of health professionals from outside of the country involved. And so we are trying to be very broad, all-inclusive. We cannot afford to have any small group of people arrive and say, I'm from health, but the definition doesn't apply to me, and therefore I don't need to stay with people like the Philippines to know what each one is talking about. If you say you're offering to me a type 1 team, I expect you to deliver a team that can manage outpatient care. If you say you have a type 2 team, I expect you to deliver a team that has at least one surgical theatre, and up to 20, at least 20 inpatient beds. So I can then understand what you are talking about when you tell me you are type 2. Type 3 is an inpatient surgical referral facility or team. These must bring at least 2 surgical theatres or surgical tables. They must provide at least 40 inpatient beds, and they must provide some level of high dependency or intensive care, and also some ability to do specific plastic or surgical care. If you don't fit as type 1 or 2 or 3, then you may need a specialist referral or a specialist care FMT. For example, a group of nephrologists or a group of pediatricians who want to help. They can come, but they must come and work inside a type 1 or 2 or 3, or they must work in partnership with an existing national hospital. They can't just come and do what they like. Next slide. Next slide should be FMT core standards. This slide is complex, and it's fully shown in the documents that I think you will get a link to at the end of this presentation. But for example, any FMT, any foreign medical team that signs up and registers and offers themselves to, for example, Indonesia, you can guarantee that they will come and register with you, that they will maintain minimum core standards and minimum technical standards, and they will report on their arrival to you, and they will also report at regular intervals. And it's for you, the Ministry of Health, to tell them how often, but it could be daily or it could be weekly, whichever you like. But they must report their actions and the numbers of people that they have seen. They must keep records and make available to the patient those records for follow-up. They must be licensed, they must have training, they must bring the right equipment, and they must be self-sufficient, particularly for medicines and for surgical supplies, as well as care of themselves as a team. We go then into a lot of very complex detail on technical standards. They must meet the minimum, which is, for example, providing sterilization if they are doing surgery, providing some form of insurance if they're providing medical care, etc. Next slide. From the Typhoon Haiyan experience, I can talk from a government or a responding FMT perspective because I was there doing this, but the response from the Department of Health in the Philippines was the new guidelines and the new classification of type 1, 2, 3 was very clear, very easy to understand, and they used it for the very first time in a disaster. The Philippines were the first country to try it, and they found it beneficial. They actually, on the first week, sent a letter from the Minister of Health to all foreign medical teams asking them to register using the guidelines that we have written through the WHO. There was one section which they found it became a very large amount of work for the Department of Health in the Philippines, and it's something I know that Dr. Ofran will talk to you in the next presentation about. But we stand ready to help you increase your capacity to manage this if it's something that will happen in the future. There was also this confusion in the early time about what an FMT means when they say they are from, for example, from Germany. Now, the Department of Health, especially in the regional office, thought that meant that they represented the government of Germany, but they may have been an NGO from Germany. It's not the same as from the government of Germany. And so there was a little confusion between government teams and non-government organizations sending teams. There should be a next slide or next section at the bottom of this slide. You will see that at least 80 teams registered on arrival, but we know there was at least 150 deployed. And so we're not finished yet. There is some more work to do to make sure everybody registers with the Department of Health. The next slide. The way forward, the next steps are to seek broad consultation and endorsement from technical and academic groups, from foreign medical teams themselves, from governments that can send and governments that may receive foreign medical teams, and from regional organizations such as through ASEAN, the Pacific region, the Pan American Organization, etc. We are also talking extensively to the UN and our colleagues in OCHA and other areas, and with donors. Within months, you will see a global registration system which we developed here become active. You will also see us offer support in planning, in strengthening law, disaster law, and in training in each country. Particularly, it will be offered to countries with the most risk of sudden onset disaster, and Indonesia is one of those. You will also see us try to increase our technical support at a country level, which means through the WHO, through UN systems, but also foreign medical teams that arrive will be taught how to coordinate themselves to be less of a burden to the Ministry of Health in that country. Next slide, please. It should be a triangular structure. This shows a system of medical care that is available in every country in the world, which is basic healthcare units at the bottom, in the middle, district level hospitals, and then above that, high level or referral hospital systems. If the government of, for example, Malaysia can tell us that half of the basic health units in that region and 2 of the district hospitals have gone because of a flood or whatever, then that's the number of foreign medical teams and the type of foreign medical teams that they can ask for, type 1 and type 2, to reproduce what was lost. It means that you can then say, no thank you very much, I don't need type 3, because there was never a type 3 in this region, and it is inappropriate for you to bring that level of care to this region. And so we also expect as foreign medical teams to work in collaboration with the national health system and to reproduce the referral, because normally a patient who is sick is seen at the basic health unit, is referred to the next level, and if need be, to the top level for care. And then equally they get discharged down to the basic health unit afterwards. We expect foreign medical teams to do the same thing in collaboration with their national counterpart. Next slide. Future responses. We would expect that the Ministry of Health can demand compliance with the new guidelines. They will look primarily to registered foreign medical teams that can guarantee that they have core principles and technical standards before they arrive. We will also expect the UN system to assist with this and help coordinate foreign medical teams as they arrive, and for the FMTs that arrive to understand their roles and responsibilities in terms of surge capacity, and then when that surge is over, that they leave in a seamless manner where they hand over care of patients to the national parties who are there on the ground. It is not to take over, but just to support, to work within the coordination system, and then when they're not required anymore, to leave. The next slide, thanks. This should be the end slide. This document is available through the link at the bottom of this page. I'm sorry it's not in Bahasa, but it's certainly something that we can work towards, perhaps with Ibu and others, in rewriting so it's easily understood. We will take this document, which is available on the net, and create a 20-page, clear, concise précis or short version, which is very easy to translate. And that should be available in the next 4 to 6 weeks or so. And so we will put that forward to you as a group, and you can use that classification system perhaps in the future. Thank you for your time. I'm very happy to take some questions if there are any.
Baik Bapak Ibu sekalian, jadi tadi sudah dipaparkan oleh Dr. Ian terkait dengan Fluid Medical Team, disampaikan tentang lesson learned dari beberapa bencana yang sudah terjadi, kemudian ada gaps-nya, turunnya pedoman, registrasi, otorisasi, kemudian tipe-tipe FMT. Jadi disampaikan ada 3 tim, ada 3 tipe, tipe 1, tipe 2 dan 3. Kemudian ada core standard FMT, kemudian rencana depan, yaitu forward dan future response. Jadi Bapak Ibu sekalian, mungkin ada hal-hal yang bisa disampaikan, atau mungkin dari WHO ada yang bisa menyampaikan beberapa poin tambahan dari yang saya sampaikan tadi, yang mungkin bisa lebih clear Bapak Ibu sekalian di sini bisa berjelas. Ada yang sampaikan berspesifik?
Ada yang mau ditanya? Langsung tanya aja, Pak. Langsung tanya.
Kalau ada yang bertanya, bisa disampaikan, nanti Dr. Desi akan membantu translate untuk disampaikan ke Dr. Ian. Kami persilakan. Ya, jadi nanti bahan dari PowerPoint presentasinya akan kita bagikan. Jadi mestinya tadi cuma karena belum kita siapkan, jadi nanti akan kita bagikan. Di forum ini mungkin bisa di-share dulu atau pengalaman, atau tidak harus pertanyaan, tapi terkait dengan FMT dari guideline internasional ini, kira-kira ada apa yang perlu ditambahkan atau komentar. Oke, silakan Bu.
FMT ini paham ya, mungkin baru kali ini saya dengar. Cuman saya membayangkan andaikan di perbatasan negara antara Indonesia dan Malaysia gitu kan, terjadi suatu bencana gitu kan. Itu prosedurnya seperti apa? Apakah langsung kan, karena kalau bantuan dari Jakarta itu kan lebih jauh gitu. Tapi kalau dari Malaysia lebih dekat gitu. Itu cara prosedurnya seperti apa? Itu aja.
Dr. Rian, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I'm afraid I
Yes, Dr. Rian, there was a question that if the disaster happens in the border of two countries, let's say like Indonesia and Malaysia, which is quite up north and very near, it's more on Malaysia side. And the question is, if we have to wait, the aid from Jakarta is take of far away and further time rather than from Malaysia, then how we cope with that? Do you understand? If there is a disaster, for example, in the border between two countries, for example, Indonesia and Malaysia, and then actually it affected two more Indonesians. But if the Indonesians have to wait the support from central level from Jakarta, actually it is
for instance, that needs to be done by the local governments. The whole process here is to strengthen the country's sovereignty. It's to strengthen Indonesia's ability to manage its own disaster and also to provide care to its neighbors. And so this will become a bilateral arrangement, and the best option I have here is that we can assist, and you can do this also, to run exercises where this discussion happens, where we practice and we make up local bilateral arrangements for this particular scenario. I think it's very valid when we talk about referral of patients. Sometimes it's faster for patients who require level 3 care to come from perhaps Aceh to Singapore. What is the approach of this, and then how do those Indonesian citizens come back to Indonesia afterwards? So we need to have a bilateral arrangement with those neighboring countries. We are also working with ASEAN and the AHA Center on this exact scenario, and you will see us move towards a more regional approach, where it is much more appropriate that teams that both speak Bahasa Malaysia, Bahasa Indonesia, for instance, care for each other's disaster, rather than, for example, a group of French arrive and they can't speak Bahasa. So it's becoming more a regional approach. And the care, the context, the standards, we will work together on. And so each country understands the rules of engagement for their neighbors.
Sementara tadi itu kalau kita lihat paparan ada 3 level ya, untuk outpatient, inpatient ya itu. Nah, tentu kalau untuk tipe 1 itu kan bukan spesialistis. Nah, bagaimana dengan kebijakan ini? Apakah ini untuk Indonesia dan luar negeri enggak?
Nah ini.
According to this slide, actually there was 3 level of this difference. But we have discussed before with the previous presentation that actually we need foreign medical team for specialistic care. So it means this type 1 actually is not really applicable.
Okay, Ian, it's more. It's not a question exactly. It's more like the experience from Indonesia. But we may suggest you to add something on this. According to the slide, I don't remember the number, but type 1, 2, 3, additional specialist. For the Indonesian perspective, the participants are thinking that type 1 and type 2 is not much that required, but it always depends on the impact, the magnitude of the disaster. But most often, the specialist service is required. So can you enlighten something on this regard? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. We have found in our previous experience that it's actually the reverse, and the requirement is for sheer bulk supply of care. So you need many, even hundreds of type 1, where you don't actually need that many type 3. The harsh reality is that often the teams don't arrive very quickly. In Aceh, the average or the peak time for foreign field hospital beds was day 17. So it's very, and that certainly was the same case in Haiti. So the very big type 3 team takes many days to come, and when they come, it's too late, and the cases that require that care have already died, and so we actually find that the most value, that the most usefulness is many type 1s and some light capable type 2s. And this is where we should look to the Indonesian experience of very good trained foreign national medical teams, type 1 and type 2. They could already exist in parts of Indonesia and then fly to another part. And so you become self-sufficient for your own care. So I would say, I would encourage more and more type 1 and type 2s to arrive quickly, and the type 3s may have less requirement.
Polisi dari kita masing-masing negara, Pak. Karena kita ini negaranya beberapa pulau dan tenaga kesehatannya, dokter umumnya untuk type 1 ini kita kan banyak sekali dan bisa merekrut dari sekolah dan segala macam. Itu makanya kita screening betul, dan dengan pengalaman jenis bencana bahwa kita nggak kalah spesialisasinya dengan yang dari luar, benar nggak? Dari ini. Jadi tergantung juga jenis bencana, tergantung juga coverage dari bencana.
Please with me, and next we will presentation from Dr. Rudi. Thank you, Dr. Lian, for the